Yeah, we're live. I'm early, 6:54. They say about the early bird. And also they say something very important. Organization is the key to success. And one of the keys to organization for any project vehicle or anything that you're trying to get done is to make a list. I myself am a big fan of lists. I have like just books full of them for a lot of times to remind myself what's going on and what I'm trying to do and the various different things that I'm trying to get done that I get pulled in various different directions. Is it the Trophy 4? Is it the Nissan L28? Is it the Dodge Omni? Is it the GLHS? What things, like what fire do I have to put out right now? That's the thing. So lists help with that a lot, but also on an individual project vehicle, lists help quite a bit because they help organize things, and when you write them down, that means you no longer have to remember them. You're no longer required for that. And the problem is on a project vehicle, especially something, if you look at the Omni, it was like, okay, there's no motor and transmission or axles or anything in there. The thing needs to be painted. There's no radiator, any of that stuff in there. So it's basically all the stuff. So a list really is the only way to keep it straight. And the thing is, and especially when I'm out there, like when I was out at the car farm talking to Ben and Brian, because they know so much about these 2.2 liter motors, that lots more things come up that we then add to that list. Because I could sit down, and this is a lot of times what I do when I'm deciding the things that I want to test. I'm famous for these kinds of lists among myself here in this room. But when I do lists, when I'm talking about doing a test sequence on a new engine family or motor family, because I know everybody hates when I say that it's a motor. It doesn't matter. Ford Motor Company, General Motors. Get over it. It's esoteric. It's not that big a deal. When I'm deciding on a new motor, a new family, an engine family, I sit down and make a list of things that I think that I want to see, and also, and more importantly, what I think that public wants to see. And I get that information from going and doing research, like I said, with the L28 or with the Turbo Dodge. I go on the line. I love that movie. I go on the line, and then I will look up and see what there is. Because normally when you type in, Dodge Omni GLH stock T1 turbo test or whatever sequence you'll put in there that you think will populate the right kinds of like search words, the stuff that comes up more often than not is a YouTube video because somebody did something on that. Not very often does stuff come up that's not video related, like it's reading related. I think maybe because people don't like that. Or it's not as popular, so it doesn't come up in the search listings as high up as other things do as viewer things, because people want to view things more than they want to read things. But when I go do my research and figure out what does that market need, what does that engine family need, what do those people need, because if I go look and there's just no information, well, then they need lots of stuff. So let's start out with what does a stock one do? Well, it does this. And a lot of times I can't find that. What is just a bone stock one do? And I know, looking at the Dodge, that was back in the mid 80s. I think that was before YouTube. But they had these, after the invention of YouTube, and people had to be modifying them and doing videos on. Same thing with the L28. Same thing. That, I go and want certain things. And so from that search and from my not finding the things that I want, then I will go and make a list of all the tests that I would like to do. And for a lot of them, especially on a turbo or supercharged one, especially a factory turbo or supercharged version, the list will be the same. I mean, it always includes a lot of the same things. I mean, we always want to do a ported head. We want to do a cam on a turbo thing. We want to do a ported exhaust manifold or a header, bigger turbo, more boost, E85, camshaft. Did I say ported head? Because that needs to be there. All of those things are kind of universal for a lot of these applications. The list would almost be the same for the L28 as it would be for the 2.2 liter Dodge. The power numbers are obviously just going to be different, and the gains are going to be different. But things would be similar. I mean, you want to put a good head gasket and head studs on all of them. Porting the head would be optimum. Ring gap obviously is going to be important for them. Uh, in the instance where we start out with a 2.2 or a 2.5 T1, an intercooler upgrade, just like with a Nissan, bigger injectors would have to be, a fuel rail would have to be part of it, fuel pump, all of that. If we're talking about one that has like the T2 stuff on the Dodge, we have an intercooler upgrade, an air-to-air versus air-to-water. All of these things are kind of universal. And the interesting thing that I like when making my list of things that I would want to do is, if I'm making a list on an NA motor, like I go get a Wrecking Yard LS, and if there's something that I haven't done with an LS, I make a list of, I have to think of real specific things anymore. But for that, it's like it's an NA motor, and then we're going to add boost. But on these factory boosted motors, it's like, okay, now I'm going to take the boost off and go NA. Because regardless of which way I'm starting, I want both of that. I want the information for both of those situations. I want an NA motor so that I know what the gains are when we add a turbo. Because if you put a turbo on a motor and it makes 300 horsepower, you're like, oh, that's really good. Yeah, but you don't know if it is or not, because maybe it's really good because the NA motor only made 100. Then you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. But maybe the NA motor made 250, and so now it's not so good. But the thing is, you don't know that unless you have both sets of data. So I like to run the thing NA. I like to run it NA a lot of times just to get the fuel injection and everything dialed in and get the motor happy and get it repeatable and all that. And then we can, then we can put more boost to it, and then, or put boost to it and then put more boost to it and put more boost to it and do all the testing. But if I know that, because the other thing that happens if I know that I have a healthy NA motor, then I know that if I have trouble with a turbo, I know that it's not the motor. I know that it's something else. We have a stuck injector or a bad turbo or a clogged intercooler or whatever the things are that I would look at that are turbo related and not engine related. But if I just run the turbo setup, then I kind of don't know. And that is my plan for both of those motors, for the L28 and for the 2.2 and 2.5 that I'm going to test both of on the engine dyno. That's my plan for both of them, because I want to do a bunch of testing NA, because we want to see. I have an NA header, for instance, that the guys from the car farm that Brian loaned me said, yeah, you can run this. This was an NA long tube header, so it would be cool, and I could run a tube off of it and do a long tube header test. For a turbo, we could do that at some kind of reasonable boost level. But all of that stuff is possible if we run the NA one, and running the NA one will, I think, also show us, like for instance on the 2.2, if we run an NA and we run that log style intake manifold, which is just going to not be fantastic. Maybe it is. It's probably not. If we run that and then we run the long runner manifolds, the one piece and the two piece, we'll see some big changes. We'll see that NA, and then when we run boost on it, if we run 7 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever that test number is, we run that on there, and then people will see that, oh, like it does this NA and it does this turbocharge, and hey, look, the curves, if the boost curve is the same, hey, the power curves are remarkably similar, because they will be. So they'll find out that the short runner one is not actually a turbo manifold. It's just a bad manifold, which is what I expect from the log. Now, what will happen on the short runner manifolds, like that log manifold, like every other short runner manifold that I've tested, especially stuff that has like almost no runner length. If you have 1 or 2 inches of runner length or less than that, it's just a big open common plenum, it's not going to do well through most of the curve. And we're only talking about like a 6,000 RPM motor anyway. If you put spring in it and put cam in it and do that stuff, and then we can run it higher than that. But right now, it's going to make peak power well below 6,000 RPM. I'm assuming, based on what the motor feels like when you're behind the wheel. I think it does make peak power less than that. And so it's not going to want to rev. And the thing is, the short runner manifold might pass the long runner manifold at some point. There'd be a crossover out at the very top. I don't know specifically yet where that is. And it may be, maybe it's 8,000. So maybe we never see it, but it will happen at some point. But those are the kind of things that you find out during testing. And those are all the things that would be on my list. So extrapolating from the list thing is when I'm doing that testing, whenever I'm doing any that carries over to any kind of project. So whether we're building a World Challenge car, a Bridgestone supercar, the land speed cars had big lists. The U.S. touring car that we won one of these championships with. All those were lists. Those are all lists of things that, hey, I got to get all this done today. Sometimes the list was like 7 days worth of stuff. We got to get all this done today. We're like, no, we can't do that. Then you got to get real specific about your list. Then you got to prioritize your list. Now you're talking about like a whole nother level of list. Now you got to go through all the stuff and go, painting the inner fender well. Yeah, that's not high on the list. That gets moved down to the bottom. Putting the cylinder head on the short block, that's fairly high on the list because that's not going to run unless we have that. So then you start prioritizing that stuff. And normally, at least for me, when I'm making a list, the priority doesn't come until later. I make lists when I'm going through video footage because the video footage, a lot of times that I shoot, is not in order. So I'll go through all video footage. I'll list what they all are usually, and I'll list how long they are. And then I'll go in and rearrange those and go, this slot's in here. This makes more sense if it's here first, and put all that in. And then when I'm editing, I know which ones to grab, and then I can go in and grab them and load them and put them in order so that when you guys are watching it, it's not jumpy and doesn't move around. Look, he didn't have the hood on the car. Now he's got the engine in it and one of the tires is off, and now they're drag racing and all sorts of things are happening. So that's the importance of the list. And the thing that I like even more than that is I like crossing the things off. I like getting stuff done. And the list tells you that you've gotten stuff done. And I am not above if I find something else to do while we're doing it and just do it. I'll write it on the list. I write it on the list just so that I can cross it off. Because then I have a higher percentage of the things that are crossed off relative to the things that are not, because I added the one thing and I did it. And I want to get credit for that. And I'm just giving myself credit. Well, the list is just giving me credit, but it's important. And those are for me, those are like little wins when you're doing these kinds of projects. So we had a big list that I made for the Omni, and we had to add fixed truck so that I could get home as part of the list for the Omni. But the Omni had lots of stuff, axles and brakes and transmission and everything, and clutch and pressure plate and flywheel bolts and starter bolt. All of those things had to be on there. And like I said on previous videos, that when I was there with the guy Ben and Brian from the car farm, they have all that stuff. So a lot of it certainly on my car, a lot of that stuff is used, but it still works and works great. And the cool thing is that they had it. So not having to go to the store to find a starter bolt or whatever it is that you're looking for, solenoids and all of that stuff was fantastic, because then we can cross it off the list. So let me know for you guys if you guys are list people, because I definitely am, and it helps a lot. It helps get these projects done, and because you go in, especially if it's a project like this where it may be 7, 8, 10 days or whatever long to get it done. Then you have a big long list, and then it's good to see progress. I mean, obviously that you've done stuff, but the list makes it official. Look, we got 8 things checked off today. That's good. So we get 8 more things checked off tomorrow. That will still only leave 300, and we'll be fine. But if you keep knocking away 8 at a time, 8 a day, and then 2 or 3 years later, you'll get it done. And the other thing that the list does, when you have a project that you're not trying to get done in 7 or 8 or 10 days or whatever, that's taking years and years, is if you make a list, it will be a reminder for you and it can also help give you incentive to go out there and just get one thing. It doesn't matter what it is. On your list might be find radiator cap. Okay, got to search through boxes or go through the field or look at other cars or whatever you got to do. I found the radiator cap. And then the cool thing is that when you do that, it may make you want to do a second thing. And even if you're only doing 1 or 2 things a day, stuff is getting done. And pretty soon you'll be checking things off your list and you'll be getting stuff done. And that's really, really important. And it's the way that stuff happens. Well, maybe it's you want to exercise or eat right or drink more or drink less or whatever the thing is. A list, I think, helps that a lot. So we're going to put up a post here today, and it's a very simple one. Did you watch the drag race video between the RT and the GLH? Did you watch the drag race video that I put up between the Spirit RT and the GLHS today? So let's see how many people. How many people watched that? You make many listens, then you lose the list. That's hard, but it happens. Usually, the list usually get, if we're doing a car, like the list will be taped to the windshield. And a lot of times I will also tape the pin there too, because I will definitely lose a pin, especially if it's a Sharpie. You gotta have like 15 Sharpies out, and 3 of them will be uncovered at any given time, so that you'll go through Sharpies. I think that Sharpies uncap themselves and then just walk around and randomly lose themselves, so that you have to buy more. But the pen, usually I want to stay with it's specific for that paper. It's not, you don't get to write other stuff down in other places with that pen. That pen is, or pencil, whatever you're using, the pencil, whatever your writing instrument is, needs to stay there. And if I tape it to the windshield, then it doesn't go anywhere. It makes it a lot easier to find later on. Let's see. I'll never get my list finished before May. Richard, did you see the new Ram EV 1500? I have not. What's a decent borescope? How much are you asking? How much they cost? You bragged on a forum with pictures. They should have switched cars. We could have done more testing. I think that I don't know how much driving experience that they both have at drag racing. But yeah, we could have done some more testing in school. But it was just, we needed to do, after we got the Omni done, and it was, as you might imagine, it was a monumental thrash of lots and lots of hours of lots and lots of days. We wanted to do something fun. So they had a whole bunch of these cars in the barn. I'm like, dude, we need to do a Spirit RT, would be cool. And he already had the Omni GLHS out. So I'm like, that's a really good, on paper, that's a really good drag race. So we need to do that. So it was kind of a cool deal. Oh, when I cap swap my truck, I use an online forum to brag and show progress. It's good to show progress. Hello from Mexico City. Hi, welcome. I do TH600 Mike. I do like the Omni GLHS also. It's ever since the Hot Rod, I think Hot Rod or Carcraft did the original story with Carroll Shelby where they raced it, I think, at Willow Springs, and I think that they originally raced it against like a Shelby GT350, if I remember back in the day, which he would have back then. He also would have doctored up that car so that it did really well, and I'm thinking he probably did the same thing. I think that car ran mid-14s at like 95 or 96 or something, which is pretty healthy. Damn drag racing. It actually was not raining anymore when we were running our tests. Yeah, the second race was much closer than the first one. Brian got a good launch in the GLHS. I think he might have tried to start in third gear, or something happened on the first run. So that was not really a good race. So we wanted to do another one. First on your to-do list is to make a to-do list. Mid-14s. It was fast for the day. If you looked at what the other cars were doing, there's a lot of guys in in V8 cars back then that would have been embarrassed by that car. Certainly, they would have been caught napping in that car, because there were a lot of, if you got the super hot L69 or the LB9 or the L98 back then, you would have been doing okay. There's a lot of other V8, like lesser V8 versions that didn't have good rear axle ratios and had a lot of accoutrement, had a lot of accessories and stuff on it that just wouldn't have done well, that weren't very fast. Yeah, that's right. You had to spec the car out to get it to run right. I mean, a 5-liter Mustang would go 13s, but it had to be a lightweight LX with, you could get those cars with an AC delete and a radio delete and lots of stuff, and a 308 gear, which is what I got on my car. My list is a sad one to get the Cutlass ready for winter storage. Yeah, that's not fun. But and I couldn't understand that when I first started working for the magazines way back. I remember the editor saying you need to do a story on winterizing your car. I'm like, what? What is winterizing your car? Is that you drive it when you're wearing a sweater or something? I'm like, no, people have to put their car, because I've been in California all my driving life, but they're like, no, you have to store your car for the winter. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I just want a 6-liter turbo 98 Camaro. That would be good. Any turbo 6-liter in anything is going to be plenty of power. You can't go to sleep and dream about the power that can be made with turbos. Well, why can't you? I thought that's what you would do, is go to sleep and dream about it. All my cool cars are in storage outdoors. Uh-oh. Uncle Tony has a 12-second tune-up for 87 Fox bodies. He's probably not the guy I would listen to about that. Gale Banks should go to sleep and dream about turbos, I would think. Although maybe there's not a lot that he hasn't done. There's a lot of information out there in Fox bodies. It's been around a long time. Lots and lots of testing. Somebody wrote a book on those, on how to make more power. I can't remember what year the Hot Rod article about the GLHS probably would have been in '86 then, right? My car's a heavy GT convertible. It at least had 308s. It had 308s. Most of the automatics came with 327s, right? But I don't remember the convertibles though. If it was a stick, it could have had a 308 in it. Five-speed. Boost is good, but I did a lot of obviously NA 5-liter stuff before I did boost on it. Although I had a Vortec, I'm trying to, within a couple years, I think I had the Vortec on there, because I remember coming back from the first Silver State and thinking a guy could win this race with a Vortec on a Mustang, because I think that Pratt Cole won the race in a Testarossa, and I don't think that the average speed was very high. It was 160 something, I think. And so I thought, I know that a Mustang, and it ended up doing that. It ended up averaging closer to 170 when I did it the year that I won. But and we knew that it could, because we knew that the car would go that fast. I have an 86 MC. Is it an MCLS? I don't know what that is. Would you LS swap or old school motor, just weekend car? I don't know what that is. I keep dreaming I'm going to find a rust-free duster body for sale. You can have one or the other of those things. A rust-free duster body for sale for cheap. So you only get one of those. You get to choose which one. Monte Carlos are good. Air-cooled VWs. I've done a little bit of testing on those. And actually it was on an engine dyno and not on a chassis dyno, although we've done chassis dyno stuff too. I like the VWs, although I wonder how long you can run them at wide open throttle. Did you watch the drag race video between the Spirit RT and the GLHS? So how could 47% of the people watching the live feed have not watched that video and it's already been out? Are you guys not watching the videos? Come on. Go make that happen. Get a rust-free Hot Wheels. Oh, okay, Vincent, I get it. Your MC is a Monte Carlo. Okay, I'm not a hip. We don't do our assigned reading on time. I don't know how much time I need to give you. Come on. BW, come on. You're a turbo guy. 2.2 are an acquired taste. The cars are cool. I like the Omnis more than I like anything else. Although I like some of the other motors. The T3 stuff is really cool. I just wonder how they're gonna. That fits very well in the engine bay. There's no reason you can't have an LS and an Omni. They're different things. So I need to pull the motor out of the car, yank the 243 heads, and put them on a forged iron block with 4340 forged short block. Okay, you don't need a forged crank, probably. Jeff Smith just got home. T3 sit fine in the old bodies. Okay. It's nice because the intake manifold's up front, too. I kind of like that. Yeah, the Omni T mentioned that the Omni's handle amazingly great for autocross, and I can't wait to drive that. I thought something interesting that I read, because I went back and reread the story that either CarCraft or Hot Rod did, or Motor Trend, or one of these companies did online. They were talking about the GLHS, and they were talking about the front and rear sway bars. But I didn't think that the GLHS had a factory rear sway bar. Does any of the Omni guys know whether or not? I don't remember seeing those on there. I remember seeing an aftermarket one that a guy put on, but based on the way that the rear suspension is designed, it kind of has that already. Turbo Colts are good. I had a Mitsubishi Mirage, which is the same thing. An all-wheel drive Talon TSI, those are good. Vortec 5-cylinder, yep, those are good. Actually lift the inside rear wheel. That's the Volkswagen. You watch the old Volkswagen Cup races and stuff. That was they would always carry that inside rear tire, and you could see if they were still on the brake too, because the tire would stop turning, so it would stay stationary as it went around the corner. It's welded in, not a traditional sway bar. Okay. So is it part of that rear suspension cradle? Because that's what that. I mean, that looks like a giant sway bar already. I've seen guys box weld those, which I think might be a good idea. I know we did that on the Mustang stuff. Aaron's in the house. It's integrated into the semi-trailing rear axle. Okay. They turbo the Rampage pickup. They didn't from the factory. Camper Special C20. It does. Those have bigger sway bars. They have big front sway bars too. That's what we do, is go to the wrecking yards and find the big sway bars for Camaros and stuff. '86 Golfs, yeah, the Volkswagens, like I said, were especially the later 16 valve stuff, were good cars, and the guys used to race the heck out of those things. There's a lot of parts for those. The Omni was not based on the Rabbit. Front-wheel drive pickup. I talked to the guys at the car farm about that. I would with what I do, and I caveat this, because I just had to tow my Omni out there, but without the towing thing, because we had gotten rid of our boat, I didn't think I'd be towing anymore. I would get rid of the Silverado in a second and just use a small truck to pick up engines and stuff from wrecking yards, which I do a lot, and carry those kinds of parts and stuff in a little truck would be awesome. And if it was a turbo Rampage, that would be even cooler. Be careful welding it up. Something has to give. GLHS 937 cracked the trailing arm at the body because it was too much. Francisco, happy to help, man. Greetings from Mexico City. I have raced down there. It was awesome. Big Topus down there. Yeah, I don't know about no lift shifts in an Omni. The shift linkage on any of those, whether it's a cable shift or the rod shifter deals, none of those are fantastic. Have you ever turboed a Texas Speed BFD chop monster cam? I haven't. I've never even run one. I've run a few Texas Speed cams, and all the ones that I've done have worked. I mean, they just have specific specs, and they do the same thing with other cams from other people that have those specs, and so they've all worked. And I don't know what the specs are on that one. It sounds like it's going to have a tight LSA or lots of duration or both. But you obviously could put a turbo on anything. My 84 Capri RS 550 T5 loved the power shifts. Yeah, loved power shifting, and T5 are usually not things that go together. When I had my SRT4, I got the Stage 2 kit for the PCM that had no lift shifts. You ran 10s in your SRT4? That's pretty fast. I didn't say anything about the 2.3 power shift. I know a lot of guys would snap their shifters off of the Mustangs and then end up punching their stereos. Not good. Not a good thing. So we're still at 56% saying no, that they haven't watched the video. I like the honesty. Disappointed in the participation level. Oh, 100 shot. Yeah, that would definitely help. Yeah, I remember a guy asking me when we were at Carlsbad, I think. He's like, how many times have you broken your shifter? I'm like, what do you mean broken my shifter? He's like, yeah, how many times have you snapped it off? I'm like, none. Well, you're not shifting. I'm like, well, it's I can guarantee you that the number of times I've shifted my car and the number of times you've shifted your car, I've done more in 1 year than you'll do in your lifetime, because I'm road racing it. And we have to shift it 1 million times during a road race. And you only shifted a couple when you're drag racing. And yet mine's still alive and yours is broke. I'm not that aggressive. A small Dakota truck once with a 2.5. That's where I got my bell housing, was from the 2.5 Dakotas for the dyno, for the engine dyno. A turbo 2.5, they work good. Well, you're not shifted. I'm not. Kind of shifty. Pro 5.0 shift tower from an 85 GT and junkyard. Nice, $5. That's a steal. Those things are probably big money now. I snapped the shifter ball off my SRT4. SRT, yep. JPL, what's going on? Would a Magnum from a Stroker be good? Magnum from a Dakota? Yeah, if it's a 318 or a 360, both of those you can do Stroker versions of those. Yeah, if you broke it on the 1-2 shift, then it's just coming towards you. It's probably okay. Someone had taken the lever on the handle, but not the tower. Okay. 228, 232, 108, LSA, 105. Yeah, that's pretty tight. There would definitely be some chop there. Aaron, installed some Johnson short travel lifters. I checked the rocker arms just to be safe with the valve completely closed. So I'm assuming you mean it's on the heel of the cam. The LS rocker arm moved just a hair from left to right. The rocker should be down on a cup, so it should not rotate like this. It might go side to side a little bit, but not like this. They don't do that. That's not normal. Shift to your fingertips. That's a good idea. Butcher, I can't remember what exactly you have to do to make one of the common block 2.5 or 2.2s to the Dakota transmission. Does anybody know? It bolts right up. We've already bolted one up. It bolts right up to the bell housing that we have. Yeah, the bolt pattern is the same. %57% are saying no. Do we have more people saying no than yes? We do. 43 and 57. Yes. So speaking of lists, I think what I'm going to do, I was making a short list today of things I needed to do. And one of them is I'm going to clean off the L28 that I have sitting in my garage. I'm also going to go over and pick up a Pontiac motor, 350, and a Turbo 400 trans attached to it, which would be good for something. Close the poll. Nobody wants to vote. Well, there's only 67 people here. So that's all the people. They're all here. So I need to get that. What else do I need to do? Something else that was car related. Oh, I want to put the L28 either on an engine stand, because right now it's just sitting on a wooden crate. Either an engine stand, or the other thing I was thinking about is get one of the little furniture dollies with the casters on them, and then just, because I have an engine hoist, I just set it on there. That way I can wheel it around. What year is the 350? It's coming out of a 69 GTO, but I don't know what actual year the 350 is. It's not a 350 HO, no. The Spirit did run good. We drained all the fuel out of it and then put good fuel in it. Tapped on the fuel pump to get it to work, but it ran very good. Yeah, the dollies are great. To wheel stuff around, and it was fun. It just was fun hanging out with those guys. There's a lot of stuff to do. An express fan would be pretty rowdy with some sawzall action to turn into a long bed. Furniture dolls for $15 at Wally. Nice. Oh, a big block on one. Basic 69 350 4-barrel was like 320 or 325 horsepower. I don't think that this one has an Edelbrock 4-barrel intake manifold on it. I don't know that the motor was originally a 4-barrel. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not sure. You have to make a roller cart to fit the L28. They are pretty long. And that's the thing about putting them on the engine stand too, is everyone's worried that they're so, so nose heavy. Are you interested in a Datsun Roadster? I think that they're really cool, but I don't need another car though. The hopefully it's a pre-71. You mean the motor or the Datsun Roadster that they're talking about? If it's a 1600 Roadster, I think it has to be a pre-71, right? You have to burn the list at fastest pen after you memorize it, though. You got to memorize it first, and then you burn it. The Hellcat took 10.86 seconds. The Camaro ZL1 required 11.26. If you wonder what time you get from Boss 302 and Boss 3. A Boss 302 and a Boss 351 were probably 14 and maybe high 13 second cars on the Boss 351. I'm doing a 67 GTO. The lady that owns this motor and that owns all of this Pontiac stuff is getting rid of all of it. Unfortunately, her husband passed away. So if you're looking for any Pontiac stuff, let me know. You got wheels and tires and dashes, and there's all kinds of stuff. The act of writing things on paper makes it stick better in the brain cells. Yes, that's part of the studying process. What ring gap do you recommend for high boost LS7 head gaskets on a 5.3? We normally run 28 or 30 thousandths. I screw 4x4 wood to my furniture dolly. That's a good idea. You kind of stand it up. They never done anything with an oddball 6-cylinder Ford 4.2 in the late 90s F-150s. No, I want to do the 5-liter version of that, the 300, but not that. I haven't done anything on the Ford 4.2. Stay out of my walls. So we're back down to 53% because more people now are watching it, and so the numbers are going down. The older GM 6-cylinders, like the 292 that I have, are very popular in Puerto Rico. There are guys doing crazy stuff with them down there. Has anyone done the LS53 upgrades to be put in a 2009 1500 LT Chevy Suburban? I don't know what you mean by that. You should have an LS in there already, right? Are you swapping another one in there? In 2009, that should be an LS. Been looking for another set of Oldsmobile rally wheels. What head gaskets are running? I think that they're Mopar Performance ones, but I'd have to ask. I'd have to ask Ben which ones they are. We have a set of Cometics, but I know we didn't use those. You can't change your vote. No, but you can log off and log back on and then vote again. I was surprised you do have a video about turboing. Yeah, and I ran a Dominator carburetor on one. On top of an adapter, on top of another adapter, on top of another adapter, on top of another adapter, going to a single carburetor hole inside the stock manifold. I think it was a Felpro gasket. I don't know if does Mopar Performance make their own gaskets or do they have Felpro supply them? Richie, any chance you want to sell your Nissan RB? Maybe after I'm done with it, if it doesn't go in the Z. The LS9 head gasket still fine in the 5.3. That's it. We ran them on a 6-liter, I think, but we have run them on 5.3s also, even though the bore is different. The LS9 head gaskets, it's bigger than the bore on a 6-liter also. 2009 is a Gen 4, different crank sensor. If 2009 is a Gen 4, then you have a 58X wheel and a 4X cam sensor. That's easy to fix, though. Mopar head gaskets are disco. All right. Butcher, I've been thinking about going with Cometic, but I'm unsure about the thickness. I'm thinking 66 thousandths. That's probably too thick. I would measure and see where the piston is relative to the deck surface. If it's at 0 deck, which would be cool but unusual, if it's at 0 deck, you only need to be 50, 53 or so thousandths. I wouldn't go to 66 because that's pretty thick. I don't know how thick the factory ones are, but you don't need that much piston to head clearance, and these motors could all use a little bit more compression. Every time I want to learn something, Richard already has a video on it. I have a lot up, though. Mopar use our own gaskets. New Felpro is good. Yeah. It's not the gasket that we use on the motor, the stock one that's in the car, is not going to get huge power. The ones that like, especially the 2.5, that's going to go on the dyno, that's going to get a lot. Yeah, Mike, the bigger motors are 292. They also made smaller versions. Made 230s, 250s. When your truck trans broke, did you just change it to another used 4L60? It wasn't a used one. It's actually a rebuilt one from Summit. We found a guy that was selling it. Was selling it after he bought it, and it had never been used, so it was still in the wrapping paper and stuff, which was kind of nice. The only thing we had to do, and you'll see the special tool that we used. The vent tube was clogged, so we didn't find that out until after we'd done the install, and it started wanting to throw fluid everywhere. Are what hard to find in junkyards? A 292. I got this one from Freiberger that he had sitting around. Larry, my deck height on my Corvette. Oh yeah, LS is going to be different. Corvettes might actually be out of the hole, but I think I was talking about the 2.2 Chrysler stuff. Do you have to balance a 5.3 if you add forged pistons rods to it? Yes, most definitely. I've gone through 2 Felpros. That's why I was thinking MLS. Why are you breaking them? Is the head gasket really that weak? Is the tune not spot on or something? I don't know that much about those head gaskets. And if you blow a MLS head gasket, something's wrong somewhere else. But the other ones, you may have reached a cylinder pressure thing. I don't know about the Felpros on the 2.2s. Amazing what a good brush set can do for oil passages. Yeah, this isn't an oil passage. It's just a vent tube, the external vent tube. And you wouldn't be able to get a brush in it because it's like you need to have something like that you can barely see. But if I hold it up there, now you can see. That's how big it is. It's bobby pins, so I can pick locks. Not really. Do you have any good videos on oil control? No, but that would be cool though. Anything that shows oil flow looks like inside a running engine. That would be awesome if they had small cameras in there in the oil passages. Keep burning right through the back of number 3. If you're burning through the head gasket, you need to look at. I would look at the tune. I would measure the injector flow, not just tap on it like the like the way that we cured that one. There's probably an issue somewhere. Have ARP head studs, bolts, and the tune is great. So are the ARP bolts or studs? Not that really makes much of a difference. I just like studs better because I like putting them in and then putting the nuts on. Daryl, I have not run the 3.9 liter V6 ever. Was it purposely plugged by the rebuilder? I don't know. We think there's mud daubers that got stuff in there. There was nothing. Everything else had a cap over it or into it. This didn't have a cap on it, so we think something got in there. Banks did a clear diff cover. I have seen that. That actually is pretty cool. You have older injectors. If you can't do anything else, you could switch injectors and see if something happens to another cylinder now. Yeah, the engine would be cool. I want to do a clear pan, at least a window, so we can look at that. And I'm going to do a clear top for the valve cover, I think, on the 2.2, so just so we can look in there. Because if you haven't looked at the video, you should watch it with the. We spun the oil pump, and because you can do that with the belt off, and so we didn't have the belt on, we spun the oil pump, and then you could see the oil squirters. Oh, excuse me. You can see the oil squirters alternating as we rotate the camshaft, which is kind of cool. And I like the idea of them having oil squirters, especially on the slider cams. What would cause an oil pump to have pressure idle but not under load? Is your pressure relief stuck, or the bypass stuck or something? First gen Miatas have oil squirters. Do they have oil squirters on the cams? There's a video of a VW with a window on one valve guard. Amazing how fast it fills oil. It is. There's a lot of stuff going on that people don't realize. You got to do the math on what's happening inside these things. Everything's going pretty fast. Watch out for Melling's oil pumps that with small plugs that have a hole in it. For what application is that? 1.6 engine was robbed from a Turbo Rally Mazda 323. I like the 323 GTXs a lot. Black Bridges have oil squirters on the cylinder passages? Or do they have it on the bottom of the pistons? Lots of motors have it on the bottom of the pistons. I've never heard of anybody squirting the cylinders. That sounds like a cat purring. We have two fans. We have that one that's blowing, and then there's another couple of them on the computer too. What kind of oil do you run on the Junkyard 5.3s? I run whatever is on sale at the local auto parts store, but normally it's a 530. Sometimes I'll do a 1030 if it's got a lot of miles on them, which they all do. Do you ever watch Jay Papadakis from Real Street? I don't think so. I'll have to check it out. Rotella is cheap. Yeah, Matt likes that stuff over at Sloppy. I just get something that says oil on it because I like to go, you know, big steps first and then worry about the little things later. So does it have oil or does it not have oil? Let's see how that works out. Then we get particular about what we're doing. Yeah, the Rotella is the diesel truck oil. SRTs have oil spurs that spray the cylinder wall. The piston goes up. Why would they spray the cylinder wall? Are you sure they're spraying the wall or are they spraying the bottom of the piston? I like Rotella. I would love to see some breakdown dyno tests on it. I don't know what you mean by breakdown dyno tests. You want to run the motor till it breaks or something on oil? Because that's going to be forever. That's not good. We're not going to be able to do that. You don't almost have to do like viscosity breakdown or something, like an endurance deal. That's not fun doing endurance testing on the engine. They've done some of that with a couple of guys where you run it for like, you know, hours and hours and hours and hours, and it's just find interesting stuff though. It would make sense that they're piston squirters, that they squirt the bottom of the dome, the underside of the piston. That's normally what factories do. Honda's been doing that since the 90s. Viscosity breakdown with endurance. Yeah, that's really hard to do. Wouldn't there be massive amount of smoke coming out of the exhaust if there was direct oil injection to the pistons? It's not. It's to the bottom side of the piston, though. All it does is help maintain piston temperature. It keeps piston temperature consistent over long periods of time. We used to road race them for 24 hours on the Honda side, and they work really well. Piston squirters are a really good idea, and they've been using them forever. So you're not squirting it on the top side, and you're not, that I know of, you don't ever squirt it on the wall either. I mean, I don't know what gets over there, but that's why you have ring scrapers. But ideally, you don't want very much piston on the wall. You just want enough, but not a whole bunch so that you're not burning it. Yes, don't forget to hit the like button. If you got a modern car with an $800 cat, just spend it for the spec oil. The ones that we run on the dyno don't have cats on them, though. Yeah, you don't want to put oil to the top of the piston. Pre-oil injection. Yeah, if they could circulate oil before startup, that would be really good. It's a good. It's almost time to get off, but I have a good story for you on changing the oil or just checking the oil on my wife's Mercedes. It doesn't have a dipstick. You can't check the oil from outside. You have to go in and ask the computer what it is, and it can take up to a half an hour for the computer to decide what it is. So you have to go through a whole sequence of stuff. And, apparently there's a level sensor in there that gives you it has this amount, which I do not like. because that's an interpretation. I know that it's probably right, and I know that the level sensor is probably good and it's doing what it's supposed to. But I like a dipstick that tells me a mechanical thing. I don't like a sensor interpretation and then an interpretation from that sensor of the digital readout to tell me what's going on. I know people that have these kinds of cars don't want to check their oil and will never check their oil and will never go through the process of this to check their oil either. They just want to drive it and have it not ever be a problem. And they wouldn't want to get dirty and with a dipstick and stuff, but I do. That's how I want to check the oil. He comes back, he gets food when he does. Nice. I think a simple SRT 2.4 swap with a T855 speed. Stage 2 ECU, wastegate, 55 liter per hour, put my good tune. I don't know what that's for. I don't know what you want to swap that into. Not an Omni, because I'm not putting that in my Omni. I'm not building the Omni to make a lot of power. Otherwise, I would have done it completely differently. I would put a K24. I do like RX-7s. I like Gen 3 RX-7s. Remember the motorcycles with the wiper, you had to turn on the screwdriver? Yeah. Not that many people check their oil on motorcycle stuff. What do you think about the direct injection K20s? I don't know that I don't. Oh no, I have seen a couple of those. There's a guy that comes in to West Tech, Chris. He has a Type R that I think is direct injected. I think it's a direct injected K20, and it's the boost is turned up. It's running E85 and stuff, so it makes really good power. Those are impressive cars. It's come a long way. It makes a lot more power than a a a B18C5, I think is what if I remember my B series stuff. The original Type R, the 195 horse, 1.8 liter. You have to warm the engine up before it tells you it's out of oil. Some of the tube, but you have to buy the dipstick. How much can you overfill an LS truck oil pan for launching? I don't know why you'd want to overfill it. Two more minutes. Mark, you got to watch the video. So we'll close out our poll with, and we're getting toward back even. 54% saying no, they have not watched it. 46% saying yes. So you guys have some homework to do. Go watch it. It's a drag race. It's fun. It's fun stuff. Come on. 2-minute warning. More oil is not more better. The thing with it, whenever we run LSs on the engine dyno, I always run them a half a quart low. So we put 4.5 quarts in it with a truck pan, and that's it. Otherwise, it does get into windage issues. Yeah, you can still go back and watch. Eric's out. People overfill the pans if the pickup isn't starved during launch. I'm trying to think of where the. Is this a truck pan? The truck pan has a baffle on it, right? Because doesn't the pickup go down into the hole of the baffle? Isn't the top of the sump kind of covered, but maybe not all the way? Yeah, if you have to overfill it because you're losing oil pressure during the launch, that's good. Although I think it should be fairly easy to adjust what's going on in the pan to do that. I mean, it already has a factory windage tray and has a baffle in the pan, so I don't. How are you getting it to spill out, especially instantaneously like that? I'm not. I haven't spent a lot of time out drag racing truck oil pan, so I'm not the guy to ask about that. It just seems odd to me given the design. Because I think that the baffles are, if I remember right, they're bolted in there too. They're screwed in, right? Maybe if they're up on the two-step, they're putting all the oil to the top side of the motor. I don't know. First gen Preludes. Wait, what generation Prelude had the four-wheel steering? Super Hicus. That's right. I think maybe Nissan had the Super Hicus, right? 91 did. Okay. Four-wheel steering. I remember the guy driving up and showing us that when we were standing out at the car lot. Which one? Which one had the Super Hicus on? Which Nissan had that? S13 or S12? It was something that we had here in the States. I guess on the trail. That's right. 240SX. Okay. I know that they were a lot more money than the others. Oh, 300Z. Okay. The ZX. I think maybe those were Super Hikes. Corvette never had four-wheel steering, right? R32 Skyline. I do like those. I like the R34s too. In fact, I was walking. We were walking our dog with my lovely wife Lisa. We were walking over the park, and I walked by, and there was a young couple out in their yard, and we were walking by. I said hi to them, and I stopped and said, "Is that a Skyline?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You're probably one of the only guys I've seen that know what that is," and stopped and pointed it out. I said, "Oh, I know what it is." I said, "I have an RB25 over my shop." He's like, "Oh, cool! Wow, that's awesome." Because they're a little weird. Do you pre-fill oil filters? Yes, on everything, even ones that go in at an angle. I put oil in them and then just put it on and try it. That's really the trick. That's one of the fun things that you get to do as a mechanic. I'm not a mechanic, but I play one on YouTube. That you get to put oil in it and figure out how much you could put in, and can you get it on there? Because if you spin it, you can keep the oil just at the right spot and have it not spill out because you're constantly spinning around. So can you do that without spilling it? That's always the trick. It's obviously that's a lot easier when you can see everything on the dyno. When you're doing it up in a car, it becomes more problematic. Anything that goes up from down below gets filled all the way. Skylines are everywhere in Australia. That would be awesome. And you guys have like king brown snakes too, which is awesome. I saw the omnipotent sticker on the GLHS. Greg, I think there was a Greg there. Seth, yours will be the last comment for tonight. Off topic, but do you have any thoughts on modern TBI systems? I heard some critique of such things recently, but had no experience with them. I'm not a fan of throttle body injection. I don't think that they have, or at the last time we have tested them many times, that they had all the bugs worked out, that they work consistent and work like they're supposed to. Maybe all that's changed now, but it hadn't as of the last few times that we tested them. So that's why I don't recommend them to people. Through brown snakes, yeah, those are kind of venomous and very common, which is a good combination. And they get big too. On this one, I just have to on the throttle body injection. I just have to go with Brule and say, hey, look, and just put a carburetor on it. Yeah, when you're filling the filter, you can't just pour it in and then it's full, because it doesn't. It goes in, seeps into all the nooks and crannies, and then you got to fill it a couple. Usually got to do that a couple times before it's all the way full. If we're putting a brand new motor on there or something where we're going to spin the oil pump up, and you don't get it exactly full, if you put it on there, it's fine as long as it's mostly full. And then with if it's like a small block Ford or Chevrolet or whatever, we'll spin the oil pump anyway, and the oil pump has oil in it because we always prelude the oil pump before we put it on. And we fill the pan full of oil, fill the filter full of oil, spin the pump, get oil everywhere, get it coming out of all of the rockers so that all the lifters are pumped up, adjust the valves. And then on an LS, we'll do a similar thing. But what I do is we fill the pan up, we fill the filter up, we take the plugs out. We don't put them in yet, or don't put them in yet if it's a new one. We cap all of the valve cover and any of the PCV fittings, and then we'll pressurize the crankcase with 1 or 2 psi. That will help force oil up, and then we hit the starter and we can get 200 or 300 RPM or whatever on the starter with no plugs in it, and spin it over. And by doing that, it grabs the oil immediately, and within a few cranks or whatever. Because the last thing you want to do is put together a brand new motor and then not have the fuel injection working, and you're like on the starter button like 200 or 300 times, and then it doesn't start. And I'm like, I just don't even want to do this. I want to take it off. I want to put a carburetor on there and run it just so it's. I need to hear this thing start up, and I need to see oil pressure. So we go to the trouble of making sure that it has oil pressure before we do any of that, and then get it all working and get it running, and it has oil pressure. It's all happy. King snake is the king. I do like king snakes. I got to catch a milk snake, which is very much like a king snake. Do you have does I don't know if does Australia have the equivalent of king snakes over there? I don't know that a king snake would be resistant to brown snake venom, though. Brown snake venom, I think, is much more aggressive than rattlesnake venom is. I think it's much more deadly than a rattlesnake is. And so king snakes are, because of where they are they're all actually, there's a variant of a king snake basically everywhere in the United States and in other countries too. I think they have in Mexico, in Canada. And so, but they're resistant to, they're not completely immune, but they're very resistant to rattlesnake venom. So they catch and kill rattlesnakes. But the thing is, a lot of guys don't realize they get all the credit for it, but a lot of other snakes do that too. Indigo snakes and milk snakes, a lot of other snakes do that too. really any other big snake that can grab a smaller snake will eat it. So if you get a big gopher snake, it will eat a rattlesnake too. Racer snakes will eat rattlesnakes. Lots of them will eat any kind of snake, not just a rattlesnake, but anything. They're just like targets of opportunity, kind of. Ooh, a taipan, yeah. Eastern brown, very common. Black mamas are not in Australia. Those are in Africa. Richard, this will be the last one. Sorry, gave the 2-minute warning. Richard, do you think cryo treating an aluminum block will strengthen the main threads? I don't know about the threads. I don't know a lot about cryo treating because I never tried it. I've had guys reach out to me about it. I just don't know how you do a structured test to determine that, yes, this is better. Because here's the problem. If you wanted to do, let's say you wanted to do a test, you wanted to test a non-cryoed block, stock block, versus a cryoed stock block, and then test them to some power limit, I guess, to see where the destruction is of the block. It's hard to get to the destruction limit of the block that the cryo thing is going to save it, because let's say it's 10% better, or 50 or 100, or whatever the number is, whatever the percentage is. If it is that much better, how do you get it to that point? How do you get to the stock one to that, and then the cryoed one to that, and the stock one breaks? But then my question always is, if you were able to do that, which would be an almost insurmountable task, if you were able to do that, my question is, what was the difference between those two blocks to begin with? What is the variation between two production blocks and two used production blocks at that have been seasoned and abused, and what's the difference of them now? Is it 10% between them now because of the life that they've had, because of the production tolerances to begin with? I don't know any of that, and not being able to know that, I would be really hard to answer that stuff. Garter snakes. Garter snakes are good. I caught like 7 or 8 of them when I was at the carp farm. And those are actually that's the most snakes I've caught all this year. I think I only caught one other one, which was a water snake, which was up in Tahoe. And my son pointed it out. I need to get out and go look for some more, because I missed that. That's like my time away to go relax. Catch king snakes. Those are hard to find though. Lots of gopher snakes, lots of garter snakes. A king snake is not venomous. They're not. They don't. But they eat venomous snakes. They're constrictors. That's how they eat rattlesnakes. They bite onto the head and coil around and squeeze it and then eat it. Yes, that's what they do. Constrictors, kind of like pythons, and most of the boa family too. Australia also has pythons as well. I think carpet pythons and stuff there, which are very, very cool. And on that note, that's your herpetology lesson for tonight. It's time to get going. Thank you guys all for showing up. More videos coming up tomorrow, and then I will be back on the live feed tomorrow. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you later. And boom, and